Shall I begin?
Yes, sir.
I start?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, good morning. We are on to lecture 3 of this course. And if you recall, in lectures 1 and 2, they were more qualitative. In the first lecture, we talked about how the problems of classical physics and the experimental features of atomic domain that led to quantum mechanics. In the second lecture, we spoke a great deal about the uncertainty principle and the double slit experiment. These were qualitative, but those discussions are quite deep. And I would say to a certain extent, even debatable, but I did not bring forth unnecessary debates, etc. However, from now on, we come to the mathematical formalism of quantum from today's lecture, where there are no question of any interpretative debates or anything like that. And the purpose of this course is actually mainly to master and to get very familiar with the theoretical formalism of quantum mechanics, which involves some mathematics, not a very great deal, but some bit of maths. So we'll begin with that now. So I'm going to start with what is known as wave mechanical formulation, and then the wave function in coordinate space, then I'll digress a little on the mathematical topics of delta function and Fourier transform, which are absolutely essential for quantum mathematics. And the wave function in momentum space, then I'll try to see how the uncertainty principle, which we arrived at yesterday qualitatively, it actually emerges from the formalism of quantum mechanics. And as an example, the Gaussian wave packet, etc. Then I'll give you references and acknowledgement. So let me begin now. So wave mechanical formulation. So wave mechanical formulation, this word, instead of saying quantum mechanical, wave mechanical formulation is that version of quantum mechanics where you deal with wave functions and coordinate with functions, as we shall see. So that wave mechanics is the same thing as quantum mechanics, but a certain version of quantum mechanics. Now, what do the uncertainty principle and the wave particle duality imply? And the uncertainty principle implies that the classical trajectory must be abandoned. I told you yesterday, because trajectory implies that we must know R and V at every instant precisely, which is not the case because of the uncertainty principle. And wave particle duality is a bit mysterious thing, but the way quantum mechanics handles is that one feels tentatively that the particle is represented by a function called the wave function. And if this wave function is very highly localized, it is a narrow packet, then the quantum system is behaving like a particle. If it is very extended, then it is something like a wave. And generally, it will be intermediate. And that is called a wave packet. And it will not be fully infinitely extended, but it may have some finite extent of width. Of course, this is just a starting point. We have to incorporate. There are various other things that are needed to develop it into a theory or a formalism. First, we need to say what this psi RT is, a clear interpretation of psi RT. Second, if this wave function is going to be the basic object of the wave mechanical version of quantum mechanics to describe, we must know how it moves in time. So it's dynamical equation. Please note, in physics, when you say dynamical, it always means time, the dependence on time. So Newton's second law is the dynamical equation of classical physics. So please remember that word, dynamics. And third, most important, is that we have to extract all possible information about all observables that we are familiar with. From this wave function, if we are going to claim that this is the basic object of the theory. Now, before I go ahead, I mean, this is very early in the lecture, but I want you to write on your chat, and then the coordinator may kindly tell me what the answers to these questions. What do you feel is a physical interpretation of psi-RT? You have learned all these things in your courses, so I'm sure you would know it, but I want to get some idea. So I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes, and please quickly type out your questions. I'm sorry, your answers to these questions. What do you think? First question, physical interpretation of psi. You are seeing the questions on the screen, so you write. Because of lack of time, I will not give more than 2-3 minutes. Meanwhile, if
so I see, sir, people typing answers. Shall I tell them?
Yeah, please tell them a few, because we have a
yes.
We don't have time.
So most of them seem to be telling that the mod square of psi represents the probability, and psi is a mathematical object. It does not have physical interpretation, but mod psi square has.
Yeah,
so that is
great. Second, are they saying anything about second?
Okay, second question, state of a particle. What does psi represent, state of a particle?
No, it's dynamical equation. What are they saying?
Schrodinger equation.
Yeah, Schrodinger equation. Are people answering that? Schrodinger equation?
Yes, sir. People are writing Schrodinger equation.
That's great. And third is an important point. What are they writing about third?
Okay, I haven't seen so far anything on operators, measurement. That is what people are writing. Operating operators.
So it's very clear that the third question is rather difficult, and therefore it will need some formalism of quantum mechanics. There's some noise from where? Okay, so the third question is a bit hard, and that it will need the whole formalism of. So we give you the answers in anticipation, which we are going to do. So first we interpret psi mod square as the probability. It's not probability, it is probability density, which is an important difference. And most people casually call psi mod square as probability, but they should, if they want to be careful, if they are in a casual conversation, that's okay. But if you want to write a proper statement, it is probability density. So please remember that it is not probability, as we shall see in a moment. Second, psi-RT moves in time according to Schrodinger equation, the time-dependent Schrodinger equation. We'll do it in the afternoon lecture. Third, to extract probability information in psi-RT of all the possible observables, all observables of quantum mechanics, we need the full theoretical framework. It's not an immediate question that we can answer. And for that, we'll build up something in today's lecture, but actually the full answer will be given in the 7th lecture. So some general remarks before I start off. The uncertainty principle in X and P is built in the theoretical framework. As I told you that, earlier we were talking qualitatively, but now it's going to be what delta X and delta P are will be defined properly in the formalism, and then we will get an exact inequality, which is we going to see that. So that order of magnitude that I wrote earlier is going to be replaced by a clear cut. In fact, it is a special case of a more general uncertainty relation in quantum theories. So those of you who are doing the tutorial, they will find it, but you don't worry. I mean, it is there. This relation is there in most books, and you can see, for example, Griffiths, and you will find this general uncertainty relation also. Then other features that we talked in the first lecture, quantization of energy of bound states, angular momentum. I mean, what happened to this new theory has to explain that. Otherwise, what will be the purpose of this new theory? So the new theory is going to rigorously arrive at quantization of bound states and also angular momentum quantization, etc. So that is why this theory is now an accepted theory. Also, the problem of size, shape, stability, and atomic spectra, which classical physics could not handle, they get very satisfactorily resolved. As we go through the course, you will be convinced of this answer. Now, some general remarks. We restrict here to the wave mechanical version of one particle non-relativistic quantum. So we are really doing it almost the simplest that we can do in quantum mechanics. One particle and non-relativistic quantum mechanics. But quantum mechanics can be formulated not only in wave mechanical, but in a way which is more general. And such a formulation is necessary not only for elegance or some mathematical elegance, but actually there are physical observables like intrinsic spin, which cannot be handled properly. They can be handled ad hocly, but not properly in the wave mechanical version. So you need the full abstract vector space theory, which we are going to do in this course. And one of the purposes of this course is to very clearly make you understand that how this vector space theory, its representation is the wave mechanics, and so on. So these are very important points which need to be understood. And it's not only intrinsic spin. As you formulate quantum mechanics in more advanced domains, there are various other things which cannot be expressed in terms of R and P, and you need the abstract formulation. Now, QM has been successfully generalized to many particle systems. We are not going to do it. In your courses on atomic physics, molecular physics, solids and nuclear physics, you will be seeing these. I'm sure you have already done it, so it's not something new to you. Even the relativistic generalization of QM, it's called quantum field theory. And it can, now our version cannot deal with particle creation and annihilation. It deals with one particle and it remains there. Doesn't get created or annihilated, but at relativistic. And I think I told you last time, I don't remember if I told you, again, I tell you the meaning of non-relativistic. Non-relativistic means where the electron speed, if you're talking of electron, is much, much less than the speed of light, but relativistic is where it is comparable to the speed of light. And so when energies are much, much greater than the rest mass energy, and then other particles can also be created, etc. at relativistic energy. It's a highly complicated subject, but it is one of the greatest inventions of human mind, the quantum field theory. And in fact, its agreement with a particular version of electron photon, which deals with what called quantum electrodynamics, is absolutely astonishing, this mind-boggling agreement with experiment. So it is because of these impressive achievements of quantum mechanics, so no matter how mysterious it looks, and no matter the little interpretative issues, the formalism is on a very, very sound footing because of this incredible agreements with experiment of such advanced domains as quantum field theory. So of course, we will not do this, but you should, this will motivate you to do this thing. It is not a ordinary subject. It's a subject which is one of the, regarded as one of the greatest inventions of human mind. So you should feel highly motivated to learn that. So I come back to more earthly things, the wave function in coordinate space. Before that, I caution you that description of an electron by an extended wave packet does not mean we view the electron as an object whose mass is sort of extended, smeared out. It's not that at all. Electron is still a point particle in quantum mechanics, even in quantum field theory. It is a point particle. So what do you mean by it is extended, but it's still a point particle? Where does it show up? It shows up in the fact that we are using 3 coordinates. Psi is a function of 3 coordinates. That is where its point nature has come. Supposing I had an object, even say a nucleus, which have protons, neutrons, and I want to do a many body problem, then psi will have to be a function of all those coordinates. So please understand that is why we are calling it point particle. It may look a little confusing that it's a point particle, but it is still represented by a wave, extended wave in space. So that's the point is coming up in this argument. Another thing you have to understand that psi-rt is not any real wave packet. You know, the electromagnetic waves are real waves. You do complex things, but if you remember your electrodynamics, you always say real part of that. That is the physical thing in electromagnetic fields. Of course, electromagnets are real. They need charges to detect, but psi-rt is not a real wave packet. In fact, we are going to show that psi-rt, I should say, psi-rt is a complex function. I think this needs a bit, we should say psi-rt is a complex function. Sometimes there are situations where the R-dependent parts can be real. But in general, it's complex. It is simply a mathematical object that describes the quantum state of the particle. Please remember, I think there is a minor oversight on my part. Here also, it should be written as psi of RT. So when I finish the lecture, I'll make that change. I'm talking of psi RTs. Occasionally, the space in part of it in very particular situations can be real, but that's a different point. Yeah. So please note down in your notes that it is, I'm meaning psi of RT is a complex function of R and T. Okay, then next. So one way of saying is that psi RT, you know, it's a complex thing. So how can a complex thing describe a real object? And some of you have answered it already. But the way Niels Bohr put it, that it is not a description of a particle, but it is actually a description of our information about the particle, our knowledge. I found this Niels Bohr's phrase very, very interesting from the beginning, from the time I read this phrase. I mean, it describes our knowledge of the particle. And what kind of knowledge? In fact, it was very confusing. Does it represent an ensemble or does it represent a particle, etc.? Then the Niels Bohr interpretation prevailed that psi RT denotes a particle. If it is probabilistic, we will have to think of an ensemble to understand the probabilistic nature of that. However, psi RT refers to a single particle. That's one of the most important points about the Niels Bohr interpretation. And the fundamental postulate was, after some confusion around 1925, when Born gave this probabilistic interpretation, and that it is proportional to probability density in position of the particle. Now, again, please caution, I mean, this is a common mistake among students. They call psi RT mod square as probability. Psi RT mod square is not probability, it's probability density. Please remember, when a variable is continuous, you always talk of density at a point, and if you want to talk of the total thing, you should multiply it by an infinitesimal volume, and that is probability. So this is dimensionless. This quantity will be dimensionless. This will not be dimensionless. This quantity will have the dimension of 1 by L cube. So psi will have the dimension of 1 upon L to the power 3 by 2, etc. So please caution about that. However, we can always say it is equal to. I here said but it is equal to. The reason is that, as we shall see, this is an important point, as we shall see, the quantum equations, the eigenvalue equations, and even Schrodinger equation, etc., are all linear homogeneous equations. Therefore, you can never get the solution of those equations exactly. There is always an undetermined constant. You understand this phrase, undetermined multiplicative constant? Yesterday, I told you I'll be using this phrase often. Undetermined means if psi is a solution, as constant times, constant multiple. I have constant, remember the word constant. A constant multiple of psi is also a solution. This is because of the mathematics of linear homogeneous equation. So because of this freedom that psi, if psi is a solution, constant times psi also is a solution. Because of this freedom, it is always possible to make it equal to. If it is not equal to, you just multiply by suitable constant and it becomes equal to this. I hope the point is clear. And so it is convenient to say it is normalized and it is equal to probability. In that case, we have this equal to 1. In case it is not normalized, the sky doesn't fall. If it is normalized, it will become a finite constant. And then you take the square root of finite constant here and redefine SI, and that will become normalized. So sometimes, very occasionally, one deals with unnormalized wave functions also, because if that's not your interest, if your interest is something else, you don't need to bother about it. But we shall, in general, talk of normalized functions. So all our formulas are for normalized wave function. Please remember that. So once it is equal to probability density, from, I think I told you last time, I don't remember, that once you are told probability density or probability of at various points, then the rest of things are not physics. They are just elementary statistics. So what is the average value of R? Now, this doesn't require physics. Physics requires in saying that this is probability density. That in mathematics, the statistic person would not know. But once you tell him or her that it is probability density, then these formulas follow from elementary statistics. You take the value multiplied by the probability and integrate overall. If it is a discrete variable, then you must be remembering your formulas in your statistics courses, some xi and pi summed over I. That's because there the index is discrete. Here our variable is continuous. So we have to do integration. Summations are replaced by integration. And any other function, the same point. There's nothing different from this. Now, same thing for variance and uncertainty. Nothing different. Every statistician knows this. You have expectation. The only thing is people use the word mean value, and physicists for some reason like to use the word expectation value. It's just has come down to us. So in physics books, they will call it expectation value. You can call it mean value if you like, or average value, whatever. What name you give is totally unimportant. So XT, so variance of probability distribution in X, how do we define in statistics? Value minus is average value, it takes square and that will be the average of this quantity. Average of this quantity. Just as the average of this quantity is this, average of this quantity is multiplied by probability and integrate. So that is called the variance. And it is very easily shown in statistics, and you should be able to do yourself. Just open it out and you will find. So this is the formula I'm going to use for variance often. I don't need to go this. This is a more elegant formula. X square mean value minus expectation value minus X expectation value. T I have put everywhere because T is there. So these quantities will change with time. So that's why the index T. Uncertainty in X, what we call uncertainty, statisticians call it standard deviation. So we'd equate our uncertainty is this. So that is by definition in the quantum formalism, the uncertainty. So this is the uncertainty of this. So all these relations follow from elementary statistics, given the crucial postulates that this is the probability. So that is the point I have emphasized enough now. Now I go ahead on brief note. If you have any question for this, but I will not take much time because I have to do a lot. Yeah, just 5 minutes.
Okay, so then the question is that what does normalized wave function tell us, and why is normalization necessary?
As I told you, normalization is necessary for convenience so that psi mod square becomes equal to probability. I mean, would you not like to say instead of saying it's proportional, it's better to say equal to. So that is for convenience. But what you have to understand is how, I mean, everywhere in mathematics, this will not be possible that if psi is a solution, I can multiply it by constant, that also becomes a solution. That is only in quantum mechanics because psi is undetermined. Its overall constant cannot be determined by the equations. So you have a choice. So the important issue is that choice you should understand. And of course, it's obvious that if I have a choice, I'll make it equal to probability. Next. Yeah.
Probability density is defined for a time t or in some time interval.
Probability density is always a local, it is at a point, at of course a given time t. T is always as a parameter, will always run through. But important point is psi mod square is at R, probability density. It's no different from mass and density. If rho, if a body has non-uniform density, you define rho at a point. I'm getting some noises of some.
Okay.
Okay. So what happens to mass density? Rho is a at point. And what is the mass? A little mass. Little mass around that point will be rho of R into d cube R. About rho of R into that little volume will be that little mass. So this is nothing particular to quantum mechanics. This is the situation in physics for every continuous variable. In every continuous variable, you have to define density. And density multiplied by little volume is that little mass. Here it is that little probability between R and R plus T. Next. Is there anything else? I'll go ahead now quickly.
You can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Yeah. Now I digress to the topic of delta function and Fourier transform. So I'll be very quick, and you have the mathematical references that I'll give you. Now, Dirac delta function is defined to be this function that it is equal to 0 for x not equal to 0. And you can say at x equal to x0 is infinite, but I have deliberately not written this because a mathematician will scorn at it, saying, don't say something is infinite. So delta of x minus x, but physicists often say at x equal to x naught, it is infinity, but it's a very bad way of writing. The better thing is that to write it in terms of integral, delta of x minus naught dx all over the integral. If the integral includes x equal to x naught, then it is 1. It doesn't matter whether this interval is minus infinity to plus infinity or a small interval, but it must include x naught. And now you see why we physicists very casually say it is infinite, which is not correct mathematically. Infinite into a very little interval, infinite into small thing can be finite thing. That's the intuition behind it. And for an arbitrary function fx, continuity, what will happen over this integral if the integration includes x naught? It's all 0 everywhere. At x, this is a decent function, so it doesn't contribute anywhere except over a small little range around x naught. So it's continuous. So its value is fx naught. You just take it out and then use this integral. So this is 1. So that is the reason. This sometimes is regarded as the definition of delta function. If you want to picture it, delta function, you can picture it as a Gaussian in the limit of its width tending to 0. So this is a Gaussian function, and its width is 1 upon root alpha. You can see this, and its height is root alpha. So it's decent if alpha is not going to infinity, but when it goes to infinity, mathematicians won't like this function, but physicists, it's okay. So it is like this. For any finite, it is like this Gaussian. When alpha tends to infinity, I can't of course draw it really, but it is just a rough schematic. It is just shooting up. And actually it's shooting up to infinity, and this width is going to 0. So that is this function. As alpha tends to infinity, width, which varies as inversely as 1 upon root alpha, goes to 0. That is in the limit, the function is 0 for x not equal to x naught and shoots to infinity at x equal to, because the multiplying factor was root alpha. So if alpha tends to infinity, it is this. However, the area under the curve always remains the same. It is independent of the limit. So that's why I said this part is quite good. Delta, the non-rigor, the lack of rigor of defining function is not very much significant here. This is decent because it is true for any value of alpha. So that's why you should always, as physicists caution, you should always use delta function not as just a function outside, but always function inside an integral. That's the usual caution most physics teachers will give you when this thing. Use them in our problems. So just use, it's an even function and it is 1 upon a mod, etc. And these are the various properties. I won't go through them. These, the way these are proved are that you can't prove it as such, this quantity. What you have to do is multiply by an arbitrary continuous function and then show and integrate and show that the integrals are equal. That's the way of defining. Now there is an important representation of delta function. I'm sorry, I cannot prove it because it takes a long time to prove it, but you must know this representation. And some intuition you can develop by saying that if you see, if x is equal to 0, then this quantity is 1 and being integrated all over infinity. So delta becomes infinity. Very mathematically non-rigorous way of saying, but no harm in such mathematical intuitions. So delta of R is this. Three-dimensional version is obvious. We can do this. And why is it 0 at x not equal to 0? It is because basically the intuitive thing is it oscillates. It is oscillating all the time except for x equal to 0. So over oscillations, the integrals become 0. So they, etc. All these things, they lack rigor. And if there is a mathematician sitting on the audience, he will view it with great displeasure, what's going on. But for physics, it is all right. The delta function is not an acceptable function. Still, it is extensively used in physics because of its great convenience. Strictly, but mathematicians have not stopped at that. They have defined delta function in their own more rigorous way, in what is called a distribution of a generalized function. And using this notion, they have fixed they have made it sure that whatever we write in physics is, when it's inside integrals, is all correct. So we can leave that job to mathematicians. And suppose the wave function of a particle is taken to be a delta function. What does it mean physically? It obviously means this wave function represents a particle with 0 probability of being formed. So its delta function is a kind of, is a representation of a localized wave function. When a wave function is acting like a particle, you can say it is the wave function is delta of R, R naught, with all the reservations that I talked about earlier about its lack of rigor, etc. But don't worry about its lack of rigor. All that has been fixed, and we should use it very boldly. Now that's the topic of delta function. Now I quickly go to the next topic of Fourier transform. Now consider one-dimensional function which is square integrable. I will use the word square integral often. It simply means this, that the mod square of the function is integrable and it is finite. And so that is the meaning of square integral. I'll be often using this. Now, mathematicians have given the Fourier transform theory. It is a generalization of Fourier series, a very, very important result of mathematics, which is of great use in physics all the time, in electrical engineering, electrodynamics, in any wave phenomena. This is an extremely vital topic. And so you should get familiar with this mathematics. Now, what is being done in a Fourier transform? Just develop some intuition. Psi of x is being expanded in terms of e to the power ikx. And what is e to the power ikx? It is cos kx plus psi sin kx. So it's an oscillatory functions. So you remember your Fourier series. What does the Fourier series say? Fourier series says any function, but they say periodic function. A periodic function can be always written as a summation of sine and cosine functions with different wavelengths. So that is what Fourier series, I'm sure you would remember it. Fourier transform is simply a generalization of Fourier series and the important thing is then there is no restriction of psi being periodic or anything. Any function that's decent means this, square integral. Any decent function can be expanded in this. Now, so it is being expanded in Fourier series. Fourier series also has coefficients, if you recall. So this is the coefficient of that particular term. For each k, there is a particular amplitude. So this will be phi k amplitude. And it can be easily inverted. Now you go back home and you'll find the mathematics of delta function. In a minute, you can invert it. So please do it yourself. It will give you practice of doing mathematics of quantum mechanics. So invert it, multiplied by e to the power minus ikx, and integrate with this. And you will find you will have to use the delta function representation with this. Why these factors of root 2 pi? They are only for convenience. You need not have it, but the convenience is this very important relation, Parseval's relation. It's an important relation in mathematics of Fourier transform, that the mod square of dx is the same thing as mod square of dk. So this is function, this is Fourier transform. You integrate it over x here, you integrate dk, the mod square, not the function itself. And psi can be complex, obviously. Psi can be anything it's for. So please remember this thing. And now I come back to using it for quantum mechanics. So square integrals are called Fourier transform. Now let's apply this mathematics to this. Now in quantum mechanics, psi can be the wave function of a particle at an instant. Since probability interpolation requires it to be square integrable, I give you the condition that the functions have to be square integrable. But what's the problem? In quantum mechanics, we do talk of square integrable function because we are talking of probability. They must have probability interpretation. So if probability interpretation there, psi x mod square dx must be finite. So the theory of Fourier transform is applicable. So just apply the theory to the wave function. What mathematicians applied to a function, they don't care what that function stands for physically. For us, it is the wave function at a particular instant. And I put t because t is a parameter. At every instant, you can make Fourier transform. So obviously, t dependence will go into both c as well as phi. Of course, not here. T dependence will be. And obviously, because that function, t is just a parameter. At every t equal to 1 second, there is a function t equal to 1 second. This t should be the same t, that's all. Otherwise, it is obvious that the Parseval relation, if it is true for any function, it will be true for psi of xt and phi over t. Now, where does the physics come? The physics comes in the fact that in mathematics, e to the power ikx, we know has a wavelength. Wavelength means after x repeats by x plus lambda, the function repeats. So that you know very well is the meaning of wavelength in physics. If x is replaced by x plus lambda, the function repeats. That's the meaning of wavelength. But now there comes the great point that this function is not any function for mathematics. For us, by de Broglie relation, this function is actually representing a particle of momentum t. So what we were talking of functions and waves, etc., suddenly in quantum mechanics get associated with a particle because of the fundamental wave-particle duality. The particle of momentum p is being associated with a wave of e to the power ik, and p is h cross k. The only difference between k and p is the factor of h cross. So it is always, k is a more convenient variable than lambda in quantum mechanics. So then we can interpret what is the Fourier expansion. Is there a superposition of waves, each multiplied by the amplitude phi kt, which is over k from minus infinity to infinity. Now, what is the interpretation of phi kt mod square? What is a physical interpretation? So actually, if I had time, I would have asked you, but now we don't have time. So I'm giving you the answer. Psi is being written as a superposition of various waves. So what will be the amplitude mean of, what is the multiplying constant will mean? If that constant magnitude is large, that particular wave is more present in psi. If that phi k is small, then that particular k is less present in psi. So is it not obvious that phi kt mod square will be the probability density? It can't be probability because, at a probability always will mean I'll have to multiply it by this. So it's probability density of the particle in k at time t. And k means what? P equal to H cross K. K and P, you can say the same thing except for a multiplying factor. So phi KT mod square is the probability of finding particle in momentum P at time T. But there is a small factor which we have to take care. So phi KT square is the probability of particle being in the interval K plus this. These statements are identical to what I said earlier. You have to be very careful in continuous variable. This is probability density. This is probability. This is probability. So that caution is identical caution that I made for wave function case. And if now the wonderful thing is if psi xt is normalized, so is phi kt. So which is consistent with probabilities. If I'm calling it probability density, its integral better be 1. So if psi says normalized, then the left side integral, last page, I'll go back to the last page. If this is 1, then this is, and we have interpreted it as probability, then its integral is 1. So it's nice. So we are not talking something wrong, which is it. So it's our interpretation we are giving to the formalism. Of course, at the end of it all, whether all these physical interpretations are correct or not will have to be decided by experiment. But it's very natural here to give that interpretation. We can write down those expressions in terms of P if you don't like the K variable. K is very convenient, but if you want to have P variable, then we can define phi is the probability of the particle having momentum P, which is the same thing as probability of the particle between K and K plus dk. So with this equality, because P is H cross K, there is an extra H cross factor. So you get pi T. So there is just one little factor that is the difference. Otherwise, the things are. So earlier equations can be rewritten using PH cross. So this is you might feel little happier because now we are not talking of K, but we are talking of P. But then there is an extra 1 upon H cross factorial and 1 upon H cross. The partial relation continues to be 2 because phi K square mod dk is the same thing as phi mod square dp. So it continues to be the same. And if this is 1, this also will be relevant. So in short, phi pt square dp. So today we have arrived through this mathematics and a wonderful new physical result, a wonderful new consequence. So far we were saying this is probability between x and x plus d. Now we have gone a step further. We are saying the Fourier transform of phi pt mod square dp will give you the probability of the particle between p and plus dp. So we have made tremendous progress from probability density, probability in position, we are going to probability and momentum. So we have answered part of the question 3, if you remember, which many of you did not answer. So we are progressing along that step. We are now we have answered the question regarding momentum. Of course, not for every other observable, but for momentum, we have answered question number 3. And of course, you can generalize them. That is always, once you do it in one dimension, the basic stuff should be done in one dimension. So you don't get complicated expressions, but they are easily generalized and you can just write, instead of single dp, you will have to write dpx, dpy, dz, etc. So these are obvious generalization of, they are obvious because x, y, z in physics, I mean, there is no distinction between x and y. There is no privilege in physics for between x and y, z, and so on. So in the formalism, they can't be different. So you have this. Now, once again, my same point. Okay, once you know the probability distribution or probability density, the rest is statistics. The rest is not physics. The physics is this, which took us time to arrive at. But once you have interpreted this probability, where is the problem? You can always get expectation value of P. Just use standard statistics formulas. And it is better to write for later reasons this as phi star P. But this is just a reason. It's the same thing as this, but for a later purpose, I am writing this. Expectation value also, same thing of any other function, obviously the same. Uncertainty, same things. There are no problems. You know how to get mean values or expectation values. you know the distribution. So where is the problem? Somebody can ask you higher, as they say, higher moments of the distribution. They are called moments of distribution, moments of probability distribution. This is the second moment, the uncertainty. So you can get any moment of probability distribution if you want. The probability distribution is the main object. From that, you can derive various other things. Now I come to a very significant observation. And that significant observation is going to be very useful in quantum mechanics. You see, last page, please see last page. Now, what is Px? Supposing you take Px. So it will be Px. This is in momentum space. But we have the relation between psi and p. Just go a few pages back. We have a relation between phi and p. So instead of phi, I can do the mathematics. In place of phi, I write this integral. It will be a little difficult, but not too difficult maths. You should do it yourself or look at books, relevant books. You replace phi by c. Don't do anything to p, and there'll be a dp integration. Simply replace it by c and do the integration. Then what will happen is, in terms of psi, the same px turns out to be this. This is a mathematical result from the earlier phi p mod square. I hope you get the point. It's a long but very straightforward calculation. Once again, needing you to have a good mastery of integrations for Fourier, involving Fourier transform, and a good familiarity with the use of delta functions. If you know that, this will be easy. So I leave it to you as an exercise. You should do it, and it's very important to practice at home these mathematical steps, because otherwise you'll feel diffident. You'll feel, oh, I mean, how is it come? So just try it. Just write the px in momentum space and you'll find. We are going to, why am I saying it's going to be very important? We are going to later talk of operators, and then average value of operator. Just see what happened. This is an operator. You have already done quantum mechanics, so you know it. There is this operator in coordinate space, and you take psi star and psi on the right. It's a kind of recipe. Psi star on the left, psi on the right. The operator, you integrate, that gives you expectation value of p. And similarly, you can do for x. X was easy for in terms of psi star psi. But if somebody says that, no, I want it in terms of p, no problem. Psi can be expressed in terms of its Fourier transform p. Do the maths. If you have good practice maths, that maths is quite straightforward. And then you will get this. So what does it imply in physics? The position operator is x in coordinate space, but it is this operator in momentum space. What does this imply? Momentum operator is minus IH cross del by del x in coordinate space. But what is it? What is the operator in momentum space? Just the multiplicative number p. So a multiplicative operator p in momentum space becomes a differential operator in coordinate space for momentum. And similarly, x is the other way. X is multiplicative operator in coordinate space and derivative operator in momentum space. So, and of course, when you talk of p, any functions of p, this the same points are there, provided these functions are decent. Okay. So these expressions are a strong hint. So what it says is, I can use psi or I can use phi. It doesn't matter in wave mechanics. It doesn't matter. So our idea that wave function is the real thing gets slightly now modified. The particle can just as well described by its momentum space wave function. So it is called coordinate space wave function. It's your choice. Often we are more used to this, and that is why much of, because, working in ordinary coordinate space is always a little, one feels easier. Mathematically, there is no difference, but one feels easier. So one may use psi, but the mathematics is telling you that phi pt is as good a way of describing the quantum state of the system. And further, it gives a recipe for calculation of expectation. However, I must tell you that it has still not given you probability distributions in all other observables. It is giving you only position was given in the first right in the beginning. and momentum, we arrived at it. But there are many other observables about which we have not said anything. That this Fourier transform analysis will not give you the answer for that. You have to do something else. So what is the recipe for position? Use the multiplicative operator R in coordinate space and the derivative operator plus IH cross in momentum space. And for momentum, very important, use the derivative operator. We are always familiar with this because since we work in coordinate space, position is just R and momentum is minus. This is very, very so well known that people forget it is the other way also. That momentum space, it is P and plus IH cross. In momentum space, momentum is multiplicative operator and it becomes derivative operator in coordinate space. So whatever I have written is correct. And to get the expectation value, you have to decide, do I want to work in coordinate space or momentum space? If I want to coordinate space, then you put psi star on the left, psi on the right, and sandwich that corresponding operator, whatever I have given you here, and integrate. That will give you the average value. So this is a recipe of quantum mechanics. We will show later in lecture 7 that we did not go by this recipe. Why should we have a recipe? We should have clear-cut postulates. The clear-cut postulates of quantum mechanics that we are going to do in lecture 7, this will be just a corollary. It will be a corollary of this. You won't have to give recipes. These will follow from the interpretive postulates. But it is good to know the recipes also because for practical calculations, it's important to know that. So that is the thing. Now, where are we?
Yeah. So, sir, do you want to pause for some questions or you want to take them after finishing?
I think I will take after because we have
time is limited.
Time and now the main point has been covered. So I don't think. So uncertainty principle from wave mechanics. Now wave mechanics is the version which I told you already. Now we have added, it can be psi of this. In the general quantum mechanics, I have already told you this, that these will be representation. Now let's redefine, let's revisit. I've already written these equations. Now defining the width or uncertainty in X and K as before. Now I have told you I've spent a lot of time on how to determine, I've told you how to determine from probability distributions, the width, the uncertainty in X and K. So now it's just mathematics. You give me psi and you give me a wave function psi and you obtain, you have the probability distribution in coordinates case, you have the probability distribution in K space, you use the formulas of uncertainty, etc., and you get this relation. I must warn you, it's a long calculation. It's a long but straightforward calculation. The delta X, delta K is greater than half. The important point to note is as long as we are in the K variable, it's a formula known even to an electrical engineer. Because I told you electrical engineers also deal with waves, or sound engineers, acoustic, they will deal with waves. They will also do Fourier transforms. They can say how much is the width of their pulse, say electric pulse, and how much is the K. K is the wavelength, inverse wavelength, how much is the spread in wavelengths, etc. This is standard stuff in electrical engineering. And this relation is known to anybody who does Fourier transform. So it has nothing to do with quantum mechanics. Where does the quantum mechanics come? It's a mathematical relation that can be used for any context. Context means situation, optics, sound, or any other wave phenomenon. But it is only in quantum mechanics. Now this thing is not for electromagnetism. That the K is related to mechanical property of a particle. So just put in that P equal to H cross K, and lo and behold, you get the uncertainty relation. So this is how uncertainty relation comes in the wave version of quantum mechanics. This from the standard relation, all that you have to use de Broglie relation and you get the uncertainty. So this is how uncertainty relation is mathematically proved in wave mechanics, which we arrived at physically. So now you see here, there is an equality sign. I have not put of the order because I have exactly defined what delta x is, delta px, etc. So now I don't have to, do order of magnitudes, exact this. So finally, Gaussian wave packet is just an example. You please do it yourself. A Gaussian wave packet is just a nice, convenient example where the psi is given by this, and Fourier transform of this wave packet is this all is left to you as an exercise. But I put it as a section because it's an important result to know that psi x and phi k, please get from, take its mod square, psi x mod square, and then find its expectation value. It is obvious that x will be 0 because it's a symmetric function. Obtain delta x, it will have something to do with a, because a has the dimension of length x. So it will have to be proportional to a. What factor you have to work it out and obtain its Fourier transform. It needs Gaussian integrals. And so you need to know Gaussian integrals. You should do that from some maths book. And you can obtain the Fourier transform. And do you see the thing? Here it is a square here. Here it's a square upstairs. Why? The argument always has to be dimensionless. I have not told this point, but let me tell this point. Exponential or any transcendental function in physics, the argument has to be dimensionless. So this is dimensionless. Now k is inverse length. K is inverse length. And this is length. So it is dimensionless. If I had put a square, it would be completely wrong in the denominator. This will carry dimension, which is, so even by dimensional arguments, you can say that it will have to be a square. But is it exactly half or not? That you will have to do the Fourier transform and so on. Again, it's symmetric, k is 0 and delta k turns out to be this. And if you just multiply it, it's this. The great importance of this Gaussian wave packet is equal to. So the Gaussian packet is minimum uncertainty packet. It's the packet with minimum uncertainty. Whereas any general wave packet will have greater than half. Gaussian wave packet is you can't have this product less than half, but it's a minimum. So that is a great importance of Gaussian packet. And I think we can ignore this slide. If you can make it a little more complicated by having the Gaussian wave packet here, but then you have to put a little, it's sometimes called traveling Gaussian packet. Don't worry about it. It's not very important. I think the first slide about Gaussian wave packet that I told you is very important. This is a little more complication. The only thing is it continues to have the same widths. And so even if the Gaussian packet has an extra factor, it doesn't matter because that factor will go away in psi x mod square, which is what is needed in those calculations. But with the Fourier transform, you will need psi x. So you will have to do a calculation of Fourier transform and you will get this. So this again gives you this. So if this is mathematics, if you are talking of a particle in quantum mechanics, then of course it gives you half h cross. So Gaussian wave packet gives you the minimum uncertainty as per the Heisenberg's uncertainty. And then you can take its various limits. If it is, as I have already told you, if the Gaussian wave packet is very narrow, then it becomes localized. Delta x is small, but then delta p is large, etc. So that is all that I have to say. This again is dependent on the lecture notes prepared earlier. And I must say that some of these, you see these lecture notes last year, Professor Anvesh Majumdar used them to prepare his own slides. And I have taken almost virtually a large number of slides from his thing. And the references for all this is Schiff and Gottfried and Griffiths and Cohen-Thonology. The mathematical material about delta function Fourier transform, if you want to read, this is a wonderful book, Mathematics for Physicists. It's a bit advanced book. If you don't want this much, then you can go to Arfken, mathematical physics, etc. There are any number of books in mathematics. And I find Classical by J.D. Jackson, chapter 2 also gives you a nice introduction to Fourier transform. In fact, that chapter is really good for learning Fourier transforms and delta functions and so on. So you please look at these references. I once again thank my colleagues, Dalvi and Anvesh, for all the help that they give me every day in connection with these lectures. Thank you. Yeah, if you have the time, how much is the time?
12. Okay, so it's 12. So it's 12:01. So maybe we can take 2-3 questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so sir, actually several questions are like related to understanding the physical significance of the things which we have introduced today. So let me take first question. So if Dirac delta function is a special case of Gaussian, why is it separately introduced?
Because in the limit, it is not a well-defined function. It's not a well-defined function in the limit width of it going to 0. Mathematician will not accept it. So proper mathematics requires it to denote it by a different object called generalized function or distribution. But you can take it as a Gaussian. I mean, for your intuition, you can take it as a Gaussian of extremely small width and extremely large height. So extremely, as a physical intuition, no harm in taking it. But if you are talking to a mathematician, the mathematicians don't accept that thing. They need rigorous thing. Rigorously, the function is not well defined from the point of view of a mathematician. So that's why, as just a caution, I told you. Otherwise, you can continue to regard it as a Gaussian, extremely small width. But it has wonderful properties. See, the main important thing is properties. You multiply it by a function f x, integrate the whole function, collapses to value at x. No, that thing is very, very useful in physical calculations. The delta function almost collapses the integral to the value of the integrand at the point where its argument is 0. So that is its great significance. Its great convenience. Next point, next question.
Okay, so significance of Fourier transform, expectation value, normalization, variance. So several questions related to understanding physical significance of these quantities.
You see, I want to say 1 minute statement about this. You know, students get completely worried about this business of physical significance. I mean, in advanced theories of physics, you require a lot of maths. So physical inputs come at certain points. Every step, if I write psi of x equal to 1 upon root pi Fourier transform, at that point, it is a mathematical relation. There is no meaning of physical significance to that relation. Physics comes when we start to think psi is the wave function of the particle at a certain instant. E to the power ikx is the monochromatic wave with a definite k, means definite momentum associated with the particle. That is where physics comes. So advanced theoretical theories of physics is a nice interplay of mathematics and physical inputs. And to understand it clearly, you should clearly say, in one of the sessions, this point is going to be mentioned later by some other colleague, actually Professor Anvesh Majumdar, that where is the physical input and where is the mathematics? That is part of learning advanced physics. That's part of learning advanced physics. You should not keep questioning, oh, is this type, what is the significance of this? Oh, I have put Lagrangian, what is the significance of this? Well, Lagrangian is a function that has been constructed. It satisfies action principle. And then the differential equations that come about, they are the laws of motion of physics. So theoretical quantities are introduced in advanced theories whose physical consequences at some steps, physical inputs are put. And of course, the final things are physical consequences which have to be verified experimentally. So that is the attitude to advanced physical theories you must develop. Otherwise, you will be always confused. Oh, what is the physical significance of psi? What is the physical phi? I have given you the physical significance of phi. Phi doesn't have physical significance. Phi k mod square has a physical significance. So please, it takes a little while to get familiar with advanced physics, to develop this attitude that some parts of theoretical physics are purely mathematical, but it's not. Theoretical physics is not just mathematics. It's absolutely different from mathematics. Why? Because there are deep physical inputs at various steps, and therefore the consequences are physical, which can be verified experimentally. So this attitude towards physical significance has to undergo slight change. I'm sure with this course you will do this. Fine. Yeah. Next. Anything else?
Yeah. So, sir, most questions are related to this only. So maybe we can then take them off.
So I think you have to get used to. The problem is what happens. Classical physics, almost everything is sort of picturable. You know, you have a velocity, you have liquid is flowing. So it's all our mental pictures, and we don't ask those questions in classical physics. But when we are going to domains where theoretical quantities are necessary, otherwise, our ordinary intuitions fail. After all, ordinary intuition doesn't say a particle should be associated with a complex wave function. No ordinary intuition will tell you. No layperson can ever imagine such a thing. So, see, physics theories have gone beyond our ordinary intuitive things, and the mathematics becomes an integral tool. But it is not mathematics only. And why is it not mathematics? Because at various stages, so you should identify in today's course, you should take it as an exercise, identify the points where physics has gone into. Then your idea is really clear. Please identify the points which point a mathematician would not know, but as a physicist would know. And which points are purely mathematical, which if a mathematician will know better than you, because he or she will know all the conditions under which that is true, etc. So physicists are slightly, don't have the rigor that mathematicians have about the mathematical steps. But the mathematics is different, because in the theoretical physics, physical inputs are put at various points. So please look at the whole lecture in turn, because this is going to baffle you throughout the course. If you keep thinking every step, I have to see what is the physics of it. No. Some steps are mathematical, and then physical inputs are put. I think I've explained enough.
So sorry, so there are two quick questions which I can ask. So infinite multiplied by small quantity like 0 is finite. Can you explain, sir? Somebody is asking.
I'm sure you have learned this in mathematics. You see, 0 into any finite number is 0, and 0 into infinite. But this is a very bad way. This is a physicist's way of putting things. Once again, a mathematician won't. It should be seen in a limit. Haven't you done things like sine x by x? Sine x by x. So x tending to 0. It is becoming infinite. 1 upon x is becoming infinite. And as x tends to 0, sine x is tending to 0. So it is all in a limiting sense. But, in physics, you don't always say it with great care. So I should have said 0, a quantity which is tending to 0 multiplied by a quantity which is tending to infinity, that product, actually it is an indeterminate product. So it can be any finite number. In case of sine x by x, that number is 1, but it could be something else. If you have half sine x by x, the same arguments will, but it will tend to half. So 0 into infinity is an indeterminate quantity. I think we all learned in our colleges in calculus these things, and mathematically speaking, it has to be always seen in a limiting sense. So it approaches the limit 1. Sine x by x approaches the limit 1. Okay.
So, sir, next question is, what is the difference between probability of finding a particle and its expectation value?
Oh my God, would you not, average value, supposing you are given a marks distribution in the class. So you say 2 students got 5 marks, 3 students got so many marks, 4. So this is discrete probability distribution. And now the principal of the school said, don't tell me the details of the distribution, you tell me the average value. So how can average value is to be obtained? It is just one quantity obtained from probability distribution. standard deviation is obtained from probability distribution. Probability distribution is the full information, full probabilistic information. From that, you can get various quantities. They are technically called moments, but let's forget the word movement. You can get average value, variance. In fact, for a probability distribution, continuous probability distribution, you will need infinite number of quantities to really characterize the probability distribution. So average value is the simplest one. So there's no question of equating average value to probability distribution. Probability distribution has far more information than average value. Okay? Yeah.
Okay, sir. So maybe one last question, quick question. So is delta function square integrable?
No, yeah, that's a very good question. The delta function is not, because it's not a well-defined function at all. So delta function is not square integrable. Even e to the power ikx is not square integrable. So position eigenfunctions and exact positions and exact momentum states of quantum mechanics are not normalizable functions. How you get out of this problem, we'll see later. But you have made a very good observation. Delta function is not a normalizable function, but still it is used in a non-rigorous sense. If you want to be rigorous, then you will have to give some certain width to that Gaussian, certain small width to that Gaussian. And same thing about e to the power ikx. That is also not square integrable. Okay?
Okay, sir. So yeah, so covered most of the questions today.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you. We meet in the afternoon again. Thank you very much. All the best. Okay.
So I'm stopping the live streaming.
I'll stop share.